Okay, we're going to start with a 2-minute introduction. You each have 2 minutes, and Connie will, when you have 30 seconds left, she'll hold up the yellow card, and then red is you're done. And then when we get to the question part, it'll be 1.5 minute answers. Okay, so we're going to start with Mike.
Good evening. First of all, thank you to the Women's Club for inviting all the candidates here to get a chance to hear from the public. My name is Mike Frikuski. A little bit of background on me. I have 2 kids that go to Lincoln Middle School, and I have a 3rd child who will enter Dimensions of Learning next year. My work experience that relate to the school board is I am a contractor with municipal governments down in Illinois. What I do there is I take our company's technology and I communicate with the client to create a vision and help them use the technology effectively. And then I get different groups of people to collaborate, to work together so that we can they use the technology effectively. How I got involved with the school board in general was about 2 years ago at the transformation plan. I saw some issues with my students and other students, so I started going to school board meetings over the last couple of years. I've been to committee meetings. I've spoken during public comments. I've got my son to speak during public comments. I've written Voice of the People. So I've communicated with the school board and with administrators to find out the different programs of the transformation plan and how we can make things better. And really the bottom line is I'm running because I care about the kids. I've been fighting for the kids for the last 2 years. And regardless of the outcome of this election, I will continue to fight for the kids going forward. Some of my goals when I get on the school board, I have a lot of them, but one of my biggest priorities is creating an environment of excellence where all students can succeed, where all students can achieve their maximum potential. I also want to look at how we can improve discipline in the schools and improve the public safety in the schools. And probably most important, I want to look at the budget, and I want to use the audit to create a plan so we know where we're going, what we want to do with our technology, and that we can spend our money wisely. Thank you.
She was just getting ready to fly.
I saw that, yeah.
Okay, Gary.
Good evening, everybody, and again, thank you to the Pleasant Prairie Women's Group for putting this together and the Village Hall, and for all you guys for coming out here today, because I know this is very much important to all of you, and you're here. We're here because of you guys. My name is Gary J. Kunuk. I'm a 20-year Air Force veteran, and I served 4.5 years as the education reporter at the Kenosha News, where I wrote probably more than 1,000 stories on the school board covering all aspects of the district and education, attended hundreds upon hundreds of school board meetings and committee meetings, and it helped me to understand all facets of the district and the people who run the district, not just the people on the school board, but the administrators, the teachers, the union. I got to see how they interact with all of the children. I told this community back in December when I decided to run that I wanted to restore honesty, transparency, and accountability to the school board because I felt that that was severely lacking. And I've backed that up with words, deeds, and actions over the last 4 months. I've repeatedly answered all questions people have given to me, even when, you know, there's the school board race, I think, gets unnecessarily dirty and you get detractors out there, but I think the 4 of us up here are running for the right reasons. We all care about this community. We all love this community. So you have to get past that, the dirty politics, and get to what's really important. Everything Mike said, all true, absolutely, all those things about a school board of excellence. And I've put all my ideas and thoughts out there with 25 blog posts, Facebook, website. Here's the difference. I want to do this. I want to serve on this board with independence, integrity, and absolute impartiality. That's what I think is important. We need people who are going to make decisions that you, the citizens, will not second guess and wonder why those decisions were made. And that's why I hope you'll vote Gary J. Kunuk for school board.
I'm Joanne Tauby. I'm always glad to come to this forum because it's the one with the longest traditions, and you always ask really good questions. I'm finishing up my 2nd term on the school board. I'm currently vice president, and I chair the audit budget finance, but I'm also very interested in curriculum and the curriculum audit and the implementation of it. We need a good plan. We don't need to give up just because it's such a thick document with so many things. We need to plan how we're doing it so it's manageable. Prior to being on the school board, I taught 40 years in Kenosha Unified, and I've always been proud of this district. I was an elementary music teacher, and of course, ever since Ralph Houghton really got it going, and others followed up, the music program and the fine arts programs have been recognized. Well, I think that we need excellence in every area. We need to do the very best we can for all of our kids, and so they have the opportunities and they're challenged. And yes, I am concerned that we need orderly classrooms and safe schools. And we have a bullying committee right now working on that issue. It's really a nationwide issue, but kids need to feel that they're secure and there are people there waiting for them, and I want to be in that supportive role.
Well, good evening, and again, thank you for inviting us here tonight. My name is Dan Wade, and I'm running for school board, which is quite obvious. That's why I'm sitting up here. I'm a lifelong resident of Kenosha County. I'm married. I have 4 children, grown children that have left the nest. I have 3 wonderful grandchildren. My career has been in law enforcement, 35 years. 17 of those years I spent in the administrative end of the department, last 10 as chief of police. When I retired in 2008, the first year was really pretty good. I got to do some consulting, sat on different interview panels, but then I kind of faded into oblivion like all good retired people sometimes do. But I felt that I had more to give. Now, during my years in law enforcement, especially the last 10 years, I developed a knowledge of public relations, employee relations, budget administration and budget development, and community relations, employee relations. I have served on many boards, Boys and Girls Club, Drug and Other Alcohol Council, the DARE program, and I believe that running for school board, I will bring integrity, honesty, and trust to the board. And I believe that's an important thing. Everybody up here is here for the same reason, and that's our children. I would hope that you would consider me for your vote on April 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with questions, and they are 1.5-minute answers. Our first question, we'll start with Mike, and then each time, we'll move on. Okay. What kind of superintendent should the KUSD hire?
Well, definitely we need a superintendent with experience. I believe our last superintendent lacked that experience, and that's why we had some of the issues we had, because she had a top-down approach. We also need a collaborator. This community has a lot of diverse opinions, and we need someone that's going to respect those opinions and bring all the different stakeholders in. We also need a good communicator. She's got to take the ideas, the guidelines, the policies set by the board, and use your administration to effectively administrate those to the schools and communicate the results back to the school board. So those are the 3 qualities I'd be looking for.
I've said this in the past, 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and common sense. There were things, Michelle Hancock, there were things she did I liked, there were things she did that I didn't like. And the main key, I think, was the communication piece. You have to be able to get out and talk to people and explain what you're doing and listen to them. That was one of the things I first came to the school board to talk about after I left the Kenosha News, because I believe the school board and the school board majority was working with the school board majority at the time was working with the superintendent to shut down communications and to not let us speak. And there was actually even a motion put up by the current school board president to eliminate school board comments from citizens altogether. And that's wrong. If you don't have communication, everything else falls apart. The superintendent has to collaborate and has to have serve with common sense. It's going to be difficult. It has to be a smart person who's going to help us navigate that 358-page audit, I believe. And we have a lot of really quality people right here in Kenosha who would qualify for that position. We don't need to spend tens upon hundreds of thousands of dollars to find someone in Idaho. I'd like to see who we have right here in our hometown.
I want someone who has proven positive experience in leadership of a school district, although it could possibly be someone who's led a large school like a high school. I'm definitely looking for the experience and tracking down references. How does that person communicate? Do they collaborate? Do they really listen? Or do they just talk at? I'm interested in someone who has a track record of building a team, because certainly in a district this size, one person cannot do it by themselves. All the board members together cannot do their job by themselves. That's why there's a leadership team. Actually, everyone who works in the district is part of the team in some ways. But we need to feel that that person who is superintendent is actually leading and cares, and it's not just focus groups when you come in. And Gary, I want to say that this board president, sitting out there in the audience, never suggested that we cut out public comment time, because it's a long tradition in Kenosha with government bodies to allow people to come and address the board on any number of issues.
Well, I can't add much to what everybody else has said, except, a superintendent has to be able to communicate. They have to be a salesman as well. They have to be able to sell the unified school district to the citizenry. They're the taxpayers. They have to be able to sell it to the state and just be a cheerleader, if you will. Now, they have to have the experience. They have to have the communication skills. They have to be able to work with their employees and their fellow staff members. It's great to be a decision maker. That he or she has to be. But he or she also has to be able to work with her staff and ultimately work with the school board. That's, one of the most important things.
Okay, we'll start with Gary this time. Why do we need charter schools in elementary?
One of my favorite questions, actually, because I do believe we need more instrumentality charter schools within the school district here. It gives more options. I think we have some wonderful charter schools here in Kenosha Unified. You look at K-Tech, Lakeview, Harborside, where these children have different opportunities and different ways of learning. I actually would like us to see us add more charter schools at the middle school level, because we have these great elementary schools and we have these wonderful choice high schools. I would like to see, I think our middle school students get lost. I grew up in Pittsburgh, and I went to a charter school for middle school, creative and performing arts. I went from a BC student to almost straight A's. I actually came out of my shell. I learned how to meet people, how to talk to people, and I gained confidence. That helped make me the person I am today. If we have these great elementary schools, but we lose kids in middle school, how do we get them back in high school? So I'd like to see more charter schools actually at the middle school level, and I especially would love to see a creative and performing arts school.
Why do we need charter schools at the elementary level? Well, first of all, they were an instrumentality of the district. All of our charter schools in Kenosha are part of the Kenosha Unified, and they all have a special focus. Some parents like that choice. Some parents and their children like to attend their neighborhood school. So in some ways it helped to alleviate overcrowding, but the original idea behind charters was that they would develop different programs and perhaps share with the rest what was really bringing great success. And so that's why we have charters. Do we need all charters? No, I think we should have a great neighborhood school in every neighborhood.
I think considering charter schools in the lower grade level is probably a good idea. When I grew up, I was kind of in a charter school, if you will. There are smaller classes, individual learning. But I agree with Gary too. I think there's a stronger need for that in the middle school and the high school levels. I know my granddaughter is a student over at Stoker. She's doing real well. Unfortunately, I think she could do a little bit better if she had more individualized tutoring. But is it a good idea? Depending, again, on the cost and what you have to sacrifice to get it. But I am a big fan of charter schools. I believe they have not only benefited the students, but they've benefited the entire district.
I don't think charter schools should be the best option. I think they should be a great option, but I agree our neighborhood schools should be just as good as the charter schools. We should be taking some of the things that we learned at charter schools and applying those to the neighborhood schools, because it's really not fair that we have a lottery for some students to get into charter schools, but not all the students who want to get into the charter schools to get there. And I think we also need to look at what's going on or the demographics of the students at charter schools, because I think we've seen in reports that the demographics of the charter schools do not reflect the demographics of the neighborhood schools. So it's not necessarily always a fair comparison. Sometimes they can set standards based on grade or other criteria, which can make them have better performing students. So I would just be careful on saying that charter schools always outperform the neighborhood schools. In some cases they do, but in some cases they don't.
Okay, Joanne. How would you propose to improve the math curriculum at the elementary level?
Well, first of all, as you saw in the newspaper today, we're immediately, or for next year, addressing the middle school and Algebra 1. But how would I improve it for the elementary? First of all, I think we need consistency with exactly what needs to be covered in the curriculum. And we need to be sure that the materials are there still in the buildings. Over a year ago, when we had such large class sizes, I was amazed that some of our materials had disappeared and were in the warehouse in storage, and teachers were left going to the internet or in their personal files if they'd taught long enough. A good teacher knows how to close the gap. I think, first of all, there's certain things that you need to have memorized, but you also need to be able to apply them. You need to know the concept and the application. And one of the complaints about in the United States is we try to cover too much instead of really mastering things that should be mastered at each grade level. Our textbooks sometimes are a lot thicker than those in other countries.
First of all, like Joanne said, we need consistency, in the different schools. Math is difficult for some, it's easy for some. Individual tutoring, of course, is a wonderful idea. If we were able to afford that, if we could get enough volunteers to come in and do it. The staff at ESC is the one that has to develop this curriculum. The school board would pass that curriculum. I think the school board should assist in setting the curriculum, whether it be for math, English, science, regardless of what it is. I don't have an answer of what will work, and I don't think anybody up here does. And that is the job of the staff to research and come up with a curriculum that's going to suit most of the children in our community.
I also agree we would need to use a standardized curriculum, hopefully developed by the administration. I would like to see this studied by a committee that included teachers and parents, so we got some input from all the stakeholders. I would also support more of a traditional curriculum where we memorize things, where you learn your addition, you learn your multiplication, instead of doing this box system where you take 20 steps to solve an equation. And I think we need to move the resources, away from the central administration towards the schools, so that every kid can have a textbook that they can actually take home and have supplies that they can take home, and that we can, again, use a committee to study technology that might be appropriate to help students who are struggling with learning the math curriculum.
Absolutely, I believe there must be consistency there. We must listen to the experts for what works. Here's what concerns me. We hear a whole lot about Common Core right now, and they talk about all these standards coming in, and it's a high-tech, high-slick sales pitch right now, and there's no evidence to show that it works. So my concern is we need to put the brakes on that a little bit and ask some tough questions to make sure that is what our elementary students need. As Mike said, you know, the basics. You got to learn your multiplication tables. You can't just come up with some newfangled math. I remember when my son was in elementary school at an overseas school when we were in the military, they came out with this crazy math that used Legos and blocks, and he would get so frustrated. I couldn't even help him with his homework, and he was in the 3rd grade. So there was a parent-teacher conference, and the teachers tried showing us this math, and we're all sitting around these lunch tables with our knees hunched up to our chest. No one could figure it out. So before we waste hundreds of thousands of dollars on textbooks, let's make sure it works. The vice president said at the last forum that we can't fail failing kids. I understand what she was trying to say. We don't want a 15-year-old in the 4th grade. But that mindset, that idea that we can't fail somebody who doesn't understand something, they're just going to get promoted through the system and they're never going to graduate. We have to fix the problem at the elementary school level before it becomes a problem where children aren't graduating.
Okay, Dan. What are your thoughts on classroom size, and what, if anything, would you do to reduce class size at our schools?
Well, I have a track record on that. I've really worked like, oh, it's Dan, I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. Classroom size. Obviously, class sizes are way too large. It causes issues not only for the teacher but for the students. They don't get the individualized training that they need. Charter schools have a tendency to be smaller in size, the classrooms. I would work towards reducing all the class size. When I was in school, we, again, a lot of you are around my age, therefore you remember the smaller class size, but we also had split class sizes. Back then it worked. I'm not altogether sure it's working today. I think by making sure that the teachers are the ones that know what to teach, give them the resources, give them the direction, if you will, that will all help. Behavior in classrooms is a definite issue, especially when you have a larger class size. So I think that if we all collaborate together, we come up with a plan that will definitely work.
Well, I think, like everyone else is probably going to say, smaller class sizes are important. I mean, as adults, we can probably relate when we take in professional training. Do you get more benefit out of a large group being together with 30 people in the training, or do you get better results when you have a group, say, of 6 people and get more one-on-one time with that instructor? And the way that I would hire more teachers, obviously to reduce class sizes, we have to hire more teachers. I would look at how we can streamline administration and move resources from the Education Support Center back to the classrooms, because that's actually supposed to be for supporting the classroom. So the things we do there should support the schools. And I agree with Dan. We do need to look at the discipline in the classroom so that the teachers can have better control over those classes.
I think great teachers are always going to find a way to teach, but it is important to keep class sizes to a manageable level. It's one of the reasons why I was so excited to hear that K-Tech 2 was going to open up in the old McKinley Middle School area, because that's going to take 300 to 400 children off the waiting list, and that's going to lower class sizes by about 1 to 2 students throughout the district. That's an amazing thing. Here's the frustrating thing for me. And I'm not anti-union here, but you need to understand these facts. When the KEA reneged on contributing to health care costs, this school district was forced to lay off more than 400 teachers. Class sizes increased as a direct result of that. So if someone is going to tell you that they care about kids, they need to back it up. That was not backing it up.
It's my turn now, right? I do have a track record on class size. It's very important to me because I believe in teachers building that understanding and the relationship with students. And if students just feel like they're sitting there in numbered seats and their own unique selves are not recognized, they don't achieve as well. And so when we were working on the budget last summer, I kept going back. saying we needed to lower class size. We needed to reduce the number of multi-age classrooms. Now, I'm not saying that multi-age classrooms can't work. Nash is working on a project called Next Generation. It's been very intentionally planned. It's very labor intensive for the staff as they train, but they are combining age groups and moving with the kids through the grades. But you have to be prepared. You can't just throw it out. And I think I'll stop right now. Oh. Actually, I wanted to rebut you, Gary. I needed more than 30 seconds.
And this is a two-part. Will you negotiate with the KEA, and what role should the KEA have in the district?
Well, as it stands right now, it would be illegal to negotiate with the KEA, but they do have a role as a contributor. They can bring ideas, they can bring representatives forward, and those ideas can be used in negotiations, but they cannot be there directly. So,
I'm glad to see that Mike agrees with me that it's illegal to negotiate with the KEA right now, which is my whole reason why were they allowed to do it in November and push it through on 24 and a half hours notice. Shame, shame, shame. However, I believe everybody deserves a voice and everybody deserves a choice. So absolutely, if they follow the law, I will sit at the table with them. It's not a matter of saying I like the union or I don't like the union. They're a partner in the education, and I will sit at the table and speak with them if they follow the law. And you have to do that. They absolutely, if they are certified, which they are not, thank you, Mike, for reminding us of that, then they can have a voice. They can give input on policy, but it's not their job to dictate what the policy is and what we do. They hold a stranglehold on the district, and they hold a stranglehold on all of you and all of our children if they continue to do that. That is why I am trying to run with independence, integrity, and impartiality. You need people who will serve on this board who are absolutely independent.
Well, Gary, we come from different places, although you did belong to a union when you worked for the Kenosha News. And I have no problem with unions either. In fact, I was very active, and the part of being a union is giving you an avenue for bringing ideas forward and working together. And we did sit down with the union. It took more than 24 hours. I will assure you, we had worked all summer on a handbook, which changed a lot of things and made things more in common for different levels of employees or different types, categories. And we did ratify that. And I realize there's still legal action on it, so I'm not going to say anything further, except I believe it's fair to have unions having a voice and being there to represent employees, and especially if they're pulled in and maybe being treated unfairly. So, yes, I do not think you're so independent, though, because I have noticed who your supporters are. So,
Who are they?
well, you can tell. You read in the paper today, and the
Who are
signs of
they?
You read it in the paper
Who are they?
today? And also when you and Mr.
Who are they?
You're interrupting me.
You're not
You're
answering my
taking my
question.
time. I don't have to answer your question. Thank you. When you and Mr. Wade had your rally out at the Brout Stop, the guest that you had for a speaker is a very
Joanne,
prominently
time's up.
known person.
Joanne, time's up.
Okay,
Okay.
except he used some of mine, I thought.
Okay. And we're on to Dan.
Okay, then. I echo what Mr. Pulaski said, too. But you got to remember that the union has a right, just like any other public speaker has, any entity. They have a right to an opinion. If they are the recognized bargaining agent for the teachers, then we will sit down and talk with them. If they are not, we will not. I had a unique perspective. I was both on the board of the KPPA and I was president of the KPSOA, and I was also chief of police. So I see both sides of the argument, if that's what you want to call it. But everybody does have a right to have a voice. They do not have the right to dictate. That I agree. But I think, you know, fair is fair. Everybody should be heard, but hopefully the board will make the right decisions in the future.
And if you'd like to give me another pen, since both of my pens died, I'd be okay with that, yes.
Do what now?
Using our pen.
Pen?
Thank you. All right, I'm ready.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah. How can we get building principals to be collaborators with their staff rather than being the boss?
Absolutely. That goes back to just an absolute culture of leadership. I'm actually in a 9-month leadership program right now with the Veterans Affairs. Top-down management, barking orders does not work. You have to collaborate. I think teachers, too many times, you know, teachers get treated like pawns in this whole thing and not like the professionals that they are. Teachers have wonderful ideas. I think of some of the wonderful teachers I had. And principals need to work with them and listen to their ideas and hear their ideas. This goes back to the whole thing of collaboration between administration, teachers, school board, and the union. There are times when you might have a teacher who's not following policy that the principal has to enforce policy. There's nothing wrong with that, but there should be a chain of command in place that if a teacher feels he or she is not getting proper due representation from that principal, that there's some recourse there. And I think we can do that, and we can do that by making sure the right policies are in place. That's part of what the school board does by putting the right administrators and the right policies in place.
I believe it takes everyone working together, and teachers are experts in the classroom, or they should be. And experienced teachers will know what works with children. So when it comes to writing curriculum, teachers need to be involved. It's just not an administrator down at the ESC doing it. And that's what is occurring now with the math. Also, I want to go back to Gary interrupting me. First of all, in Kenosha News, it announced a new Kenosha Cares Coalition, which has endorsed you and Mr. Wade. That's one area of support. And both of you had a rally at the Brat Stop, and you were heavily advertising that you had a prominent, very, very conservative radio talk hostess who came to lead your rally. In fact, I would categorize her as Tea Party. Now, if that's the kind of person you ask, that's the way you get labeled, just like you label me as pro-union. I'm also very pro-teacher, I'm very pro-child, and I'm pro-parent.
Well, getting back to the question, as far as the principals, we have, there is a rule
you.
and a policy against bullying, and if a principal is doing bullying, then he or she has to be taken to task. I believe if the principal is bullying a teacher, the teacher has every right and should consult with the ESC. That is something that I would not stand for. I did not stand for it when I was chief of police. If subordinates had a problem with the captain on a shift and I got wind of it, I would have a talk with them. And that's the same thing that should happen in KUSD. If there is a problem with a principal, you have a mediation session with the principal and the aggrieved party. That means that you got to be able to communicate, talk it out, and hopefully come up with a proper solution. Common sense, and believe me, all the interviews that I've done over my years as chief, common sense seems to be leaving the society, and that's a sad, sad thing.
I think the best principles would be what I call a servant leader, and that starts with respect. Respect for not just the teachers, but for the education support staff and for all the people in that building, and respect for the parents and the students who are using that facility. That principal needs to lead by allowing people to give input, by taking their examples. I mean, a line has to be drawn eventually where a decision has to be made, but that best decision will come by taking, a principal should take the information coming from the administration, discuss it with the teachers, and come up with a plan that'll work for that building. So, like, going back to what I said, respect is going to be the key for a principal to work with the teachers.
Okay, back to Joanne, right? We're up. Gary, you started the last one.
Yes,
right?
I
Yeah.
believe so.
Okay. What are your views on technology in the classroom, including students' use of cell phones?
Let's put it this way. It was pointed out in the audit that what they were seeing in the district was quite often what could have been done with paper and pencil in the past. And so if we're going to use technology, it needs to be value added. And of course, I believe every child needs to learn how to use technology, how to use it wisely, how to use discretion when they find things. Protocol, one of the worst forms of bullying is on cell phones and Facebook and probably Twitter too. And it's hard to follow that. I think they have a use, but I don't want to walk into a building when I'm visiting classrooms and seeing kids using their cell phones to text. I want them being involved with the lesson, and it should be with the permission of their classroom teacher and the direction of what they're looking for. So every part of technology does have a place. It's part of our school district policy, but it needs to be used wisely.
Well, as I previously stated, I'm 69 years old, so technology and I are not the best of friends. I believe there's a definite advantage for it, especially in the elementary schools and in the middle schools. Technology is a great asset, but it only should be part of it. You should, like Joanne said, you have to get down to paper and pencil, addition and subtraction. You have to be able to do it in your head or on a piece of paper, not on a calculator. Granted, it speeds things up. It's a great research tool, I think. As far as the cell phones are concerned, again, that's a place where you can get into all kinds of problems. You know, texting in class, bullying is definitely an issue there. But I think technology has its place at the appropriate time.
I think technology can be a great use in the classroom, but there are a lot of things that we need to be aware of. Number one, we have to understand why we want this technology. I work in local government, and I see this all the time, where they bring in a software. It's going to do everything for the department. It's going to make everything perfect. Their workflows are going to be 50 times more efficient. And then it becomes too complicated, too cumbersome. They never use it, and it gets put on the shelf. And I think the same thing happens here in Kenosha Unified. I think technology is pushed into a classroom, given to a teacher, and then they walk out, and the teacher's left with something with some vague notions of how it's supposed to be used. Another thing I have concern with when I was reading the original big audit is that there's no technology maintenance plan. I mean, technology gets dated. You have to have a plan to replace X number of your computers or phones every year. And if you don't have that plan, eventually all your really cool technology becomes dated and useless, and your kids become frustrated and won't even use it. Regarding cell phones, I'm not really for cell phones, maybe for iPad devices, but I don't like to see kids have their own phones because it can bring bullying into the classroom. They can cyberbully using Facebook or other media. So I would prefer that they had more of an iPad or more of a device that the school district could actually, the IT department could control and filter better, so that it could be used exactly for the task that it's intended for and not to bully other students.
Technology is, of course, very important. Our children need to learn how to use it. And that's why, hey, I was excited to send my son to the Kenosha Technology Enhanced Curriculum. But kind of funny, I sent him to school once with a thumb drive because our laser printer broke. And they said, oh, no, we can't use that here. And I thought it was fun. Technology? Can't use a thumb drive? So I always thought that was kind of funny. No one could explain that to me. But there has to be consistency across the board, first off, if there's going to be technology. I've heard from many teachers who are frustrated because one classroom or one school has technology and another school doesn't, or it's different, or things don't get repaired. So there has to be some consistency and some policy and oversight in place for that. And like Mike said, it's got to be current equipment. I mean, we don't want to give kids an Atari 2600 and, try to figure out how to do things. I'm uncomfortable with cell phones in the classrooms for all the reasons people said. Cyberbullying is a very, very serious issue here. It's not like bullying when we were kids. It's much worse, and it's caused many, many problems. So we need to watch that. But even bringing in an iPad is not going to stop it, because, there are ways kids can get around those blocks and can still bully and still use things. So there has to be some oversight there and a proper use of that technology.
Next question, start with Dan. How would you best handle a student in elementary school who chronically disrupts the classroom on a daily, long-term basis? If the disruptive child has an IEP, do you agree it is effective or ineffective? Should you disrupt the child's rights, override the rights of every other student in that classroom? So do you think inclusion model for special ed is the best model to use? That's a long one.
Yeah, it's a long question. When a child is misbehaving in a class, I believe it's important, first of all, to take the child aside. There are several programs that have to do with misbehaving in class. Some of them are intentional, some of them are unintentional. There's a positive behavioral intervention and support program that is available. I would like to see the Kenosha Unified District perhaps at least look into that program. And that's where you start teaching the elementary school level children proper behavior, proper etiquette, how to conduct yourself. Those that are unable to comprehend proper behavior, perhaps they should receive specialized training. It does disrupt the classroom, and it makes things very, very difficult for the teacher. You have to address that problem.
My concern might be, are we pushing this all on the student and blaming them for all the problems? Maybe the issue is we're not giving enough support in that school for these students. Have the teachers been properly trained to deal with students who are disruptive? I do agree that after a certain time, if a student becomes too disruptive, they should be removed, because I think it's ridiculous when we evacuate an entire classroom because one student is misbehaving. But that teacher should have the support of the administration behind them, so when they feel that time comes, they can act with confidence and know that that student will be removed and disciplined. But as I said, we really need to look at how we're working with these kids. A lot of these kids just have barriers or things they're working through. We just need to give them either more time with a special ed teacher, or we just need to look at the specific circumstances at home that might be causing these issues. So I think if we train our regular classroom teachers to work with these students better, then I think if we provide more support to the special education teachers, we'll get better results with the disruptive students in our classrooms.
The straightforward answer and simple answer here is, if you have a child who is repeatedly having disciplinary issues and disrupting the class, that child cannot remain in that classroom, because you have 18 to 23 or 4 other children who are trying to learn. I've heard repeatedly from school resource officers and teachers that they've sent students to the office for disciplinary issues, and they get sent right back and they don't get answers. So that goes to the last question about principals working with teachers. Our teachers are professionals. They deserve that respect, and to know that they have to look out for the rest of those children there, and that when there's going to be a discipline issue, it's going to be taken care of. Yes, IEPs must be followed. It is a federal law that they must be followed. When I was an education reporter at the Kenosha News, there was a story where a school here in Kenosha Unified was not following an IEP, and a child was failing as a result. And it basically came down to the fact that the ESE was not following its own policies. I did a story on it in the Kenosha News, which angered the superintendent at the time. But as a result, they did follow the IEP, and that child became an AB student and was no longer a disciplinary issue.
Actually, I think that there's several parts to that question. One is inclusion, one is repeated misbehavior that is disruptive. We do have PBIS in many of our schools already, and the great majority of children are great kids, and they will respond to it, especially when they know the expectations and you point out the positive things they've done. Sometimes when a child is having problems, they themselves, if you talk with them, can tell you what they need or offer a solution. Sometimes you need to talk with the parents. Sometimes it's gone far enough they have IEPs. Maybe if it's not working, you look and see if you have enough support there, if there's special ed. Do they have enough special ed support on the staff to help those children? I worked, most kids were, all of the kids were eventually in inclusion in my classes, but I always had support either from the support personnel or the classroom teacher if I need to talk with them. But if a child is going up on a countertop and breaking windows or going around hitting and shoving and climbing on tables and being totally disruptive, yes, that calls for intervention. You can't ignore it, and you need to have a plan.
Okay, back to Mike. All four of you said in the paper that our fine arts programs are one of the best aspects of our district. If budget cuts need to be made, will you touch any of these programs? If not, where would the money come from?
Well, I wouldn't cut the fine arts program. That is one of our most successful programs, and fine arts is important for the development of self-esteem, creativity, teamwork, and probably a million other things that help people be creative, productive adults. I think the simple answer, if we need to get money, we can cut back on administration, we can cut back on the consultants, we can cut back on wasteful travel. We don't need to travel to conferences all over the country. There's probably local things, or we might be able to bring people in here. And I think the audit, the first curriculum audit showed that our administration is overstaffed, so I think we could look at streamlining and possibly reducing the administration to get the money we need to keep the fine arts programs and to keep the athletic programs going.
Mike, this is going to shock you.
What?
I agree with you completely. I mean, this is a no-brainer here. We have a phenomenal theater arts program here. Children learn in different ways. They get engaged in different ways. Maybe if it's not on stage or in art, maybe it's someone who likes to woodworking or working with cars. All of that is important here. And one thing is that we've heard, and the KEA says, hey, they want to collaborate with the school district. That's where we collaborate. That's where we say, hey, look, we can't let go of these programs here. These are important to our students, and they're important to our community. And we get the parents involved in that. If it comes down to the fact that we have to cut $20 out and it's going to be this play or whatever, my gosh, I mean, did we really need to send, I don't know what it was, 30 or 40 people to a conference? It was $31,000. And I sat there trying to do the math 20 different ways to come up with $31,000. And I couldn't do it. I don't know if they were eating lobster, filet mignon. I don't know. But we need to look at it. It's not just that, though. Look at the credit card statements every month. There's credit card statements from Hobby Lobby and L&M Meats and some really questionable things that are $200, $300 that add up after a while. The school board that's serving right now, all 7 of them have an obligation to question these facts and figures. And you know what? You cut out those little things so we don't get into a bind where we have to cut a fine arts program.
I would hate to see the fine arts program cut in any way. It's just as important as math and English and social studies, and it helps develop confidence. Everyone needs to be, it helps in communication, bring the brain. It helps in collaboration and creativity. And so I think we need to keep that along with other programs. I don't consider it a luxury. I consider it a necessity. Where are we going to look? Well, money is tight. And the report said they felt our administration was top-heavy. Well, we need to look at that and see, because the administration at the EESC is there to support the classroom. And if it's not truly doing that, we need to think about how can they do it, or should those responsibilities be shifted. But definitely there needs to be clear direction from the top of what should be happening. And all I can say is we have not passed the tough times. You talk about the KEA, 4 members of the board wanted to sit down and talk with the KEA and reopen that contract when Act 10 went in. We requested it in writing. Administration was not willing to do it, and neither was the board president at the time. The KEA was willing to talk.
Okay. I understand this is a mythical question. I don't know why would anybody ever consider cutting the arts program. That is one of the most beneficial things to the youth of our community today. They learn to communicate. They learn to play an instrument, to sing, to dance, whatever the case may be. Before I would cut a single thing out of that program, I will stand on the street corner and sell pencils. We will get that money. Realistically speaking, I can guarantee you there's money in that budget that can be shifted to this program. I've written budgets. I've administrated budgets. I can guarantee you there's money there someplace.
Okay, Gary. Do you feel that standard-based grading is an effective evaluation of a child's progress and comprehension of education being provided? Why or why not?
Great question. I know that's one of the things they talked about in the curriculum audit is something we should explore. I know it's being done at Nash Elementary School, and they really love it there. But I've heard good and bad about it. I've heard from teachers and administrators who say they love it, and it really gives parents a full picture of how their child is achieving. I've heard from some concerned parents who don't like it and they have concerns. There were rumors going around that this was going to be fully implemented in the middle schools, and that really never came about. It might have came up briefly, but there was never any plan to do that. Now, if they are going to do this with the curriculum audit, so we don't have an upheaval here and we start something and stop it a year later and cause more divisiveness and dysfunction on the board, what I would suggest we do is we take it and we pilot it at, say, a middle school, and we do the standards-based grading and the regular letter grades that we're used to, the A, B, C, D, Fs. And so parents get to see both of them side by side, and then maybe they transition the next year, and if it works there, after you work out the kinks and the bugs, you expand it to 5 or 6 more schools, and then you expand it, instead of just throwing it out there without any training or anything. New ideas are great, but we have to implement them smartly.
Standards-based grading is used in all of our elementary schools except some of the charters right now. It was implemented in September. I think that many of the teachers that were, it was just presented briefly and they weren't really sure how to implement it. I think it's been confusing for parents exactly what their child is accomplishing and how well. The idea behind it may be good. People understand A, B's, C's, but you need to be grading what you're teaching, and are the children mastering it? And I think we need to take another look at how the standard report card has been working. I've been hearing pros and cons, and I'm not willing to expand it to middle school at this time.
I grew up A, B, C, D, F, and the unsatisfactory and satisfactory. Where my parents really learned what kind of a student I was when they came in for the not counseling sessions, but the student teachers evaluations. with the parents. And that's when you get to ask the questions. That's when you really get to know how your child is doing in the classroom. With A, B, C, D, and F, you do get an idea, because you can have A minus, A plus, B minus, B plus. Number-based systems, it's a number. Unless there's a written explanation, and a lengthy one, I don't think you're going to get the answers as parents. It's confusing, and not only that, but to the teachers as well. I think the proper training is most essential. Pilot program, not a bad idea.
I think when we make a change of any kind, including going from letter grade to standard-based grading, we need to have a reason and we need to have a purpose. And in this case, it was supposed to be less subjective. If we used just numbering and used as evidence, it was supposed to be less subjective. But the feedback I get from parents is it seems to have increased subjectivity, that these numbers are assigned based on just limited pieces of evidence, and parents and the students themselves, and sometimes the teachers, are having trouble understanding how these numbers are supposed to be assigned or assigned. In some cases, parents are seeing a roller coaster where they're getting a 4 one quarter and then 2 the next quarter. I also see an issue with using numbers. If you were to move it up to grades in high school, how are you going to tell a college that you got a 4 in your history class? They're going to look at you kind of confused. I think the letter grade system made more sense to me, because what I remember, it's a percentage. You get a D based on, you mastered 70%, 80% of what you're supposed to master for a subject. I think that makes more sense than just randomly assigning a standard number based on a few pieces of evidence.
Okay, Joanne. What are your feelings of Common Core and how it will affect our school district? And please describe one concern you have regarding Common Core.
I believe Common Core is here. It's not the only thing. We need to be looking to see if we're meeting standards compared with other school districts, international standards, standards put out by the Math Teachers Association, English Teachers Association. They're not the only standard. They are a floor. They are not the ceiling. And there needs to be links in there that are filled in. I think it's realistic to compare what school children are learning in one school or one district against another. And I know that some states have had much lower standards, so I'm not opposed to them. However, it truly is, how are they going to be implemented in Kenosha? And that is something we need to have control over locally.
I think when Common Core was developed, they had all the good intentions in the world. However, when you try to set standards that fit the entire population of this great country, that's not going to work. There's a STEM program, there's now STEAM program. I think if you get those all together and come up with something that really, really works. I realize this is in its infancy, and time will tell if it's going to work. I just don't want to jeopardize the future of our children for something that was a bad idea to begin with. I'm not saying it is a bad idea, but I think we're going to have to investigate it, rattle it around a little bit, and see if we come up with the correct answers.
Well, my first question about Common Core, if not Common Core, then what? We need to have some kind of standards. It's usually set by the state. Now, I know recently the governor was going to do something where he had some say, and I think that's a bad idea, not just because he's the governor, but because going forward, you never know what kind of people will have as governor and having a say in those standards. Common Core is just, one thing we have to understand, it's the bottom, it's the floor. It's just saying all the students should achieve this level. It's not the maximum. School districts can raise that bar as high as they want. The biggest concern I have is with the Smarter Balance test and all the testing that comes on with Common Core, because it's going to make it look like all the schools' achievements and all their scores have plummeted. And that's going to cause a panic, I think. And if people are not very careful, all these companies are going to come in peddling curriculum and technology. Like, oh yeah, we need this, we need that. We have to get our students up to task. No, that's not necessarily the case. I have talked with teachers. We can use some of our existing curriculum and adapt that for Common Core. We do not need to go and adopt constructivist curriculum or new fad curriculum. We could take existing traditional curriculum and adapt it for the Common Core.
Mike, I think you're right, but there's more to it, actually. We've been given this slick sales pitch that it's just a bottom-based thing here, but there's a lot more to it, and we really need to put the brakes on this and ask some tough questions, because I went into this with an open mind, did a lot of research on this. I encourage all of you to go online and look up Diane Ravitch to see what she has to say about this. You have people on the left and the right who have some very real concerns about Common Core. It was created behind closed doors in 2009 with an absolute lack of transparency. Several states approved its sight unseen, and then when they saw it, they went, ooh, that's not what we want, and now they're all backing out of it. It puts teachers in a box, and it limits their creativity. So I think it would hurt schools like Harborside and these really creative teachers. And here's the real key here, and this is what they're not telling you, and this is what you need to know. To implement Common Core, it requires every student to take a test, and that test costs $29.50. Now, if that is true, that every single student has to take it, as they're saying, that's going to cost us $668,000 just for that test. And then Mike's right. Scores are going to plummet because that's the way it's set to do, and then they're going to come in and peddle hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. It's going to end up costing us millions, and it's unproven right now. Do we really need to spend millions of dollars on something that we don't even know it will work, when I would rather make sure that the fine arts aren't cut, but yet we're just going to blow $1 million here? No way.
Okay, Dan. How will you ensure taxpayer money will stay within KUSD and not be funneled to non-instrumental charters and voucher schools?
Would you please ask that again?
How will you ensure taxpayer money will stay within KUSD and not be funneled to non-instrumental charters and voucher schools?
Again, the taxpayers' money comes to us in the form of the budget. Again, we set budgets according to needs. The voucher system presently does not cover Kenosha. I am not a huge fan of the voucher system. I guess I would do everything within my power to make sure that our taxpayer money stays within the city of Kenosha. We're talking about cutting fine arts program before. Maybe that's a good reason for not going to the voucher system. But again, that's a system that's just starting up. Again, it's a test period, but I would do my level best to make sure that the taxpayer money stayed in Kenosha Unified School District.
I'm going to say I'm not sure what a school board itself could actually do to stop that. They can send a recommendation to Madison saying that they're against this. I did talk with a gentleman from Wilmot the other night who was on the Wilmot School District years ago. He said one thing he's disappointed in local school boards is they don't go up to Madison and fight things. They just accept mandates that come down from the state. So I think one thing the school board can do is get a committee together and go up to Madison and talk to the legislators and talk to the governor directly and say, no, these changes are not going to work. I mean, we may not be listened to, but at least we can try to be effective. We can try to do something. We can try to be more proactive to keep these things from coming down, things we may not want to have here in Kenosha.
First, we need to quit looking at our children and treating our children like tax dollar signs. They're school children. Frankly, I think we hear these rumors that, oh my gosh, these private charters are going to come in and steal our tax money. It's a scare tactic, just like the malicious lies like the Tea Party crap going around when this is a nonpartisan school board race, and comments like that are unethical and inappropriate and a violation of the spirit of the law from the Wisconsin Government Accountability Board, I would remind you. Frankly, it doesn't bother me if they want to come in here, because my goal is We should not worry about these private schools coming in and taking our kids. We should be focused here on making our schools so good that they never want to leave in the first place. And we already do that. We have tremendous schools across the board. I don't care if we're talking our own instrumentality charter schools or we're talking Greveno or Lincoln. We have great teachers and we have great programs here, and we need to focus on that. And if we continue to focus on that, it's not going to be an issue.
Actually, about all we can do is send a statement to our legislators right now. I am opposed to state funding going to private schools vouchers because this area has grown. The funding for our public schools from the state has dropped on a per pupil basis. And no, I don't want to look at our students as a dollar sign, but yet it takes money to run our schools. And the voucher schools do not have to live up to the same accountability standards. And we do have a track record. One of the largest voucher school programs has been right up in Milwaukee for about 20 years, and some are fly-by-nights who close their doors overnight, and that leaves the public schools without the funding, but we have to find places to educate the students. In fact, the voucher school program in Milwaukee has been supported by the other districts in the state because it reduces the per pupil funding for every district in the state.
Okay, back to Mike. Do you believe KUSD is providing its students proper education and preparation for higher education or even real-world skills?
We definitely are providing them when we have the honors classes in the high school, but I think we could start preparing them earlier by bringing the honors classes back to the middle school, by bringing that a true honors curriculum back to the middle school. I think we could do better preparing them for the real world by creating more partnerships with the local colleges like Gateway and provide some training like how to work on cars, how to work on computers, real job skills they could use when they got out past school. I think that's all I had to say, actually.
Gosh, if I say yes, I got a minute 28 seconds left. So yes. We have some phenomenal programs here, and we do prepare our children. I mean, look at them. I mean, that when you see these children performing in college. My own daughter is graduating this year from Carroll University. I'm very proud of her. My youngest son, also a product of KUSD, is graduating from Lakeview High School, and he'll be going to UW-Platteville and studying forensics and nanotechnology, and I got it right. So, I mean, that's amazing, and we have these great programs to do that. Are there some kids who graduate who aren't totally prepared for that? Unfortunately, yes, and there's no magic bullet here. There's nothing, we can't wave our arms and say abracadabra and fix it. We need to focus on those issues to help those children succeed. I'll tell you one way to do it, and I'd like to see it returned besides the honors program. When I was a Kenosha News reporter, I did a story on Jeff Slater's culinary arts program at Ruther High School, and one of the girls told me if it wasn't for Jeff, she would have dropped out of high school altogether. Unfortunately, that program had to be cut when they had to make budget cuts, and there were issues and divisive issues with the KEA. I'm not trying to get into that, but now that we've gotten past that, we need to return that, because that program kept that girl in high school. That program kept that girl on track to graduate and made her a better person, so she would be prepared for stuff on the outside.
Our students come to school with different abilities and different needs and different interests, and we need to prepare students for the future, their future. And the best thing to build on is interests, but there are common things that all students need. They need some structure in their lives. They need to know the importance of being there, ready to work, and turning in assignments on time. And some students we have to work with more than others. Parents are very important. If it's not a parent, someone in the family helping that student. It's not just the school's task. And we are building partnerships with Gateway and Parkside and looking at the transition and what our students need and why they may be coming up short. I'm very encouraged with the increase in the STEM programs and Project Lead the Way, which we've already started expanding into middle school. So the world is different, so we need to prepare students sometimes in different ways.
Having raised 4 children that have gone through KUSD, I can say that KUSD is definitely doing an adequate job. Can we do better? Of course we can. I think a collaboration perhaps with Gateway, with the colleges, local colleges, would be very, very beneficial. As Chief of Police, I had an opportunity to talk to several applicants. Granted, a lot of those weren't from Kenosha, but I did find that one of the issues is they did not have a real idea of what the real world is like. They had some communication issues. I think that if we all work together, especially with the colleges, the business community, whoever is willing to help prepare our children for the future, that's what we need to do. We can always do better.
Okay, Gary.
Ma'am.
Do you think it was good fiscal management not to implement the provisions of Act 10? Why?
Not good fiscal management to not implement? Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you think it was good fiscal management not to implement the provisions of Act 10?
No, absolutely not. It was not a good idea to not implement Act 10. It was created to help us because, I mean, school budgets were out of control and they were imploding. I mean, it was a matter of not trying to be unfair to teachers. It was a matter of it was an unsustainable budget. We could not continue bleeding the taxpayers dry and doing more and more. We could no longer afford to do it. And so what we were giving teachers 30 years ago, we can't give to teachers nowadays. There's just, it costs too much money. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's not trying to be mean. It's we have to be fair and reasonable here, just like anyone else. I think what was unreasonable and what was not good fiscal management was rushing into a contract right before it happened, and then just as it closed, doing these secret negotiations all through the summer, as Joanne told you, without us knowing about it, and then pushing it through on 24 and a half hours notice. Legal, but totally unethical. Not bringing it up on at a school board meeting when it wasn't on an open meeting agenda, that's a violation of the law. That's bad fiscal management. That is what we have to stop. And that is why I'm running, and that is why we need more independent voices on this board. And regardless of the political garbage that gets thrown out, I am an independent voice.
I would not categorize sitting down with the various employee groups together and talking about things that we need in the district to do the job better and treat our employees fairly and to improve our system. That's not unethical. And we did have it on the agenda that was called a handbook, and we were told to pull it. So our employees are still looking for exactly what is in place. When Act 10, that's another part, was it fiscally responsible? We were impacted greatly. We lost $58 million. We had lots of employees laid off, not just teachers, but in all groups. And it impacted us in class size. So if you're looking at it, did it improve our educational system? No, it did not. And some of those so-called tools, we did not get the contract opened up because someone didn't want to meet. Now, maybe it wouldn't have happened, but we should have tried because we suffered as a district.
Well, the bottom of the line is that Act 10 was passed. It was the law of the land. Whether you're a school board, a municipality, you go ahead and you work with it to make it better, to make it work. It's very similar to the Obamacare. I mean, that was a law. It's a law of the land. Like it or don't like it, you have to work with it. Try to make it work. Was Act 10 an impact on the school system? Yes, it was. It cost a considerable amount of money. However, there was an option where the employees paid part of their pension and part of their insurance. That was the way to get some of the money back that was lost. But nonetheless, it's the law of the land. Just because you don't like it, well, I don't like it and I'm not going to do it, that's not being fiscally responsible or morally responsible.
Well, I don't know why we wouldn't want to give the teachers the security of a 2-year contract so they know what they're going to get for the next 2 years. I also don't know why it was a bad idea to restructure a handbook. The one that was in January was horrible. It had provisions in there that teachers could be removed for, or disciplined severely for just speaking out against policies or speaking out against things going on in their school. Even if they just had a genuine concern they wanted to bring forward, they risk punishment. So that is not collaboration. That is not communication. That is shutting things down. That is why the handbook had to be changed. Act 10, it was a disaster for our school district. We lost 2 schools, one very important school, McKinley Middle School, should have never been closed. That should still be open. We should still have a middle school. I mean, I'm glad K-Tech has a chance to expand, but we still should have that 5th middle school there, in my opinion. So I think Act 10 was a horrible thing.
Joanne, with having to look for a new superintendent, what kind of contract will be offered to this superintendent so that we don't go into what happened with Dr. Hancock?
Let's put it this way. I did not negotiate the contract with her. It was brought to us. We had some parameters, and then there were things filled in. And so maybe we need to be working with the board's attorney, our attorney, to work with the next superintendent to develop a contract that's fair to both the district and Kenosha Unified. And I hope we find a wonderful individual who embraces this community and this district and leads us forward, and we have growth. I'm saying that transformation plan is gone and we're building again. And that's one of the reasons I'm running for school board, because I want to see this district reach its greatest potential.
Well, like was previously stated, that is not the school board's job to set the contract. That's the legal division of KUSD, whoever makes those types of agreements. We would, of course, ratify the contract after it's been explained to us in detail, but that's not our job to set that contract. I'm not sure exactly how that would be done. As far as to the length, 1 year, 10 years, 5 years, you know, what type of payout if somebody leaves early, that's something for financial officers and attorneys to work out.
I think one of the most important things the school board is going to have to do before they hire a superintendent is they're going to have to create a vision where they want the district to go. They're going to have to set some guidelines and some policies, and they're going to have to be able to explain that to the new superintendent. Then we need to have the school board fairly evaluate the superintendent every year. This needs to be in the contract that we expect you to perform to a certain level, or we will take the appropriate measures. I don't think the buyout was a necessary thing, and I would hate to see that happen again in our district.
I think we saw the writing on the wall where the school board majority came out and said that they were going to evaluate Dr. Hancock. And, you know, I don't know about you. I'd love to have a job where I worked 2 years and got $500,000. Personally, I find it frightening that the vice president said that she wasn't in the negotiation and they were just given it and they filled in some blanks. If it's not the school board's job to negotiate and do the contract, then I think we need to look at changing that policy to make sure the school board does have that input, so the same disaster doesn't happen again where we're spending $500,000 of taxpayer money. Absolutely everything. I think there needs to be clauses in there that says if you walk away from the job, you're not going to get this, or if you're fired, you're not going to get this. I find it absolutely ludicrous that they agreed to everything and to a silence clause to not talk about it. That goes back to what I talk about the absolute lack of transparency on this school board. And if you're happy with that, if you're happy with that lack of transparency where you don't know what the heck is going on and they're saying, oh, we're not going to talk about it, well, that's why I'm running.
Okay, to stay on time schedule, we will start our 2-minute closings. And we will start with Joanne.
I think our future looks bright. It depends how we do it and by working together. I want to go back to the contract. We had posted it with a salary range, and that was the direction that was given. And I think the board should have been more involved because our sole employee is the superintendent. As a board, we select that person, and we should be more involved in developing the contract. And sure, it's a process. If you really want someone to come here, you may have to pay for quality. If you look what superintendents are getting for a district of this size. But you need to look carefully at the benefits that are paid out beyond the salary. I'm eager to move forward with how we grow our children. I think we're going to probably see some decline in enrollment with the birth rate, and we probably won't be building buildings, but we need to be sure that our buildings are in good shape and that we provide the best education for children. And it's an ongoing process. I do not have a master plan right now, although I think the district needs a master plan before a superintendent comes in.
I think the future of KUSD and the future of our children is in good hands, regardless of who wins. We're all here for the children. And that's what it's all about. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be running for this position. You know, my mom and dad, they raised me with ethics, a good work ethic, honesty, integrity, and all that thing. When I was chief of police and I made some decisions, as an officer and as a detective, you oftentimes had to make decisions instantly. You didn't have time to think about it. As I moved up in the ranks, then I found out that you got all the time in the world. You have staff to assist you and to help you make the correct decision. Even to this day, before I make a major decision, my wife says I'm a bit anal when it comes to that. I research things too much. But I often ask myself the question, this decision, is this what my mother and father would they approve of that? You know, and that's why I think going forward, the school district is moving in the right direction. I just think it takes common sense, trust, integrity, and all those wonderful, wonderful words. But you are all part of that future, as are we. And again, I am just so thrilled to be part of this, to have the opportunity to help. 69 years old, opportunities don't come much anymore. And I hope to be able to serve the KUSD to the best of my ability.
I think the Kenosha area, the Kenosha School District, including Somers, Pleasant Prairie, and the city of Kenosha, is a great area. I think it deserves a great school district so that we can attract the businesses and keep the economic growth of this area going. I want to build on the positive change we created with the new board majority starting last April and moving forward. I think we can do this using the curriculum audit. There's a lot of good ideas in there. Streamlining curriculum, streamlining training for teachers. I want to create an environment of excellence for all students. We need to make sure that every student has a chance to succeed to their maximum ability and not just to proficiency. I have been fighting for our children for the last 2 years, and regardless of the outcome of this election, I will continue to fight for our children because our children are our most important asset for this community. Please consider voting for me on April 1st.
I decided to run because I wanted to restore honesty, transparency, and accountability. And I was really excited about that, and I still am excited about that. But I learned a very quick lesson. You have to have a thick skin because this whole race has gotten dirty and ugly with unnecessary attacks against me, Dan, our family. I mean, just to give you an idea, fake Facebook profiles, top secret Facebook pages where people have written nasty things and they say things like Tea Party and to scare you. And I wondered where it was coming from, and now I know where it's coming from. I think that's despicable. I think they do that to shut you up when you stand up and try to fight to make a change, and that's wrong. That's why I am running. I want to restore independence, integrity, and absolute impartiality when it comes to our children's education. That is very important to me. We do this by collaborating. We collaborate with teachers, administrators, and parents, and we do the right thing. We make sure if the union is certified that we collaborate with them. We do this by following the law. There are many, many things we can do. I am very passionate about leading our school district forward, and I'm also very passionate about the fact that I can work with anyone. My hat's off to everyone up here. Everyone up here, we might disagree, but clearly we love the community. My hat's off to Mike, Joanne, Dan, Mike Kehoe, and Bob Nuzzo, and actually everyone else on the board, even if I don't agree with them. It's a tough job. Our teachers have a tough job. I want to work with them, and on day one, if I'm on the board, not on the board, if Dan's on the board, Mike's, whatever. Mike and I already know, we've already have said that we're going to sit down and have a beer or a cup of coffee on April 2nd. So that's what I'm talking about, with the spirit of collaboration, and I'll hope you'll vote Gary J. Kunick for school board.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in our forum this year. The questions were great as usual, and you know we did not get through all of them. So please, if your question was not answered, you know where to find them and have a chat with them.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.